Hello, hello everyone. Kimsey here, and I'm so glad to be here today. Um, for those of you that don't know, I'm an integrative nutritionist in my online nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I work with ambitious men and women who are struggling with their mental or physical health by taking a root caused body mind approach to optimize their overall health and wellness. So this talk is for you and I talk a lot about this, but these things will clue you in. This talk is for you if you struggle with difficulty losing weight, anxiety or depression, sleeping a lot but never really feeling rested. So getting like 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep overnight, but waking up and still feeling tired or feeling tired during the day. Cold hands and feet or cold extremities. You might notice your hair is thinning or it's like falling out more easily. Your nails feel weak. You may notice the outer part of your eyebrow starting to thin or even disappear. Constipation. What I'm describing are some common symptoms of hypothyroidism. And other things that can come with that would be like heavy menstrual cycles, menstrual cycle irregularity, more pronounced symptoms as you transition into perimenopause, ladies, or even like blood sugar patterns that don't seem to fit how you eat. So if you eat a healthy diet, you exercise, but you're experiencing low blood sugar symptoms, or you crave sweets, crave sugar, things like that, there can be seemingly like unrelated symptoms that can go along with hypothyroidism. So, when I say hypothyroidism, most people think, okay, their thyroid's underperforming, right? We know what that means, but I went, talked to my doctor, they ran thyroid labs and said I was normal. Or perhaps you may have gone and talked to your doctor and they said that you have hypothyroidism. They may have diagnosed you with it. I'm going to talk about the significance of that too. But what about, if you fall especially in that first category of having talked to your doctor about it and not receiving a diagnosis despite having all of the symptoms, what could be falling beneath the cracks and what could be being missed? So that's what this talk is all about today, are the real hypothyroid patterns. There's 3 different hypothyroid patterns that you need to know about in order, because the lab patterns will be different. And that's the second part of this talk, is making sure that a proper full thyroid panel is run. The standard conventional thyroid test, thyroid workup is TSH, sometimes T4. I'll explain what those 2 hormones are, but it's just not enough. It's not enough to really get a thorough view of not only how the thyroid is performing, but how your body is responding to the thyroid hormone, and if there's autoimmunity in the picture or not. So, if this resonates with you at any point in this talk, if you're here listening with me today, drop a comment below. Let me know that you're here. Tag me in any questions that might come up. And my intention for this talk is to arm you with the right questions to ask, arm you with the right labs to request, and almost I don't want to say a way for you to look at your labs and know, but a way to get a better idea, or talk to your doctor more effectively to know if there may be something going on with your thyroid or your thyroid physiology or not. In other words, is your thyroid involved in how you feel, or is it not? Is it something different? So I'm going to go over basic thyroid physiology. I really believe that education is power. And when you know what normal is supposed to look like, it makes identifying dysfunction much easier. So the thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland that sits at the base of your neck. It produces 2 main hormones called T4 and T3. Thyroid hormones affect many aspects of our body and our health. So every neurochemical in the brain, serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, right? All of these neurochemicals in the brain are dependent on thyroid hormone to be released and received. It controls muscle protein synthesis and muscle contraction. And what I mean by muscle contraction is like smooth muscle. So think intestinal peristalsis, right? You can obviously move your arm without needing your thyroid. It controls basal body temperature. It influences cell division, which is why some people will notice thinning hair or like slowed hair growth or thinning nails. So it controls DNA synthesis. So it has many far-reaching effects in the body, and that's not even getting into how I should say it controls metabolic rate because that's a really big thing too. That's not even getting into how thyroid hormone interacts with our other hormones like insulin, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, testosterone, right? The endocrine system is really like a symphony. And that would be just a whole other talk to get into. So I'm going to really keep it simple and targeted today on these patterns. But going back to thyroid physiology, so produces two main hormones, T4 and T3. 93% of what the thyroid produces is T4. Only 7% is T3. The reason being is because different organs in the body are going to need varying levels of thyroid hormone at any given time, right? The liver might need X amount, the skeletal muscle might need X amount. And so the thyroid can't control for all of that. So it just produces the substrate, T4, says the rest of the body, you convert T4 into T3 at whatever rate you need. Here's the ingredients to make the active thyroid hormone T3, but the thyroid obviously can't control for all of that. So the rest of the body does that. It's designed to convert T4 into T3 at whatever rate it needs. And that, in a nutshell, actually, I'll get into the brain biofeedback or the brain feedback because I'm going to talk about TSH too. So, thyroid hormone levels are regulated in the blood from the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus into the pituitary gland, and it acts like a thermostat. So, there's kind of a set rate, if you will, a set point given any kind of the day and what the day is bringing on within our environment. Let's call it like a general set point. And if T4, T3 levels exceed that set point, the pituitary tells the thyroid, okay, stop producing your hormone. We have enough, right? It's just like if you set the heater, you want it to come on it at, or the air conditioning, you want the air conditioning to turn off at 70. If it goes to 73, if the ambient temperature goes to 73, the air conditioning will turn off. So same concept here, right? And then if it drops too low, if thyroid hormone drops too low, then the brain tells the thyroid to produce more of its hormones, T4 and T3. And the chemical message that the brain sends to the thyroid to do that is called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, as the name implies. Lastly, is where the immune system comes into this. And there should normally never be excessive antibody levels to the thyroid, meaning our immune system should never attack our thyroid. Right. And the reason I say excessive is if you test thyroglobulin, thyroid peroxidase, which are the two antibodies that we can run in labs, if you test those on healthy people that don't have Hashimoto's, there's still a lab value. I've never seen them come back at 0, right? There's still a lab value. Less than 9, less than 30, I believe, are the two ranges that I typically see on labs. So there's still a value. I'm not saying if there's like any number next to those numbers that implies that you have Hashimoto's, right? So there's still a value, but it shouldn't be excessive. There should not be an active immune system attack on the thyroid. If there is, and it's against those two antibodies, that indicates Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition where the immune system attacks the thyroid. The antibodies that are run for that are called thyroglobulin antibody and thyroid peroxidase antibody. About 90% of hypothyroid cases are autoimmune in nature. That is an actual statistic. That is not just my like clinical experience. That is an actual statistic that approximately 90% of hypothyroid cases are autoimmune in nature. Here's another big thing to grasp with that. Hashimoto's, an autoimmune response could be happening for a decade before thyroid lab values become off. So TSH, T3, T4, they could be normal, they could be within the optimal range, and someone has elevated antibodies. They have an active autoimmune response against their thyroid. This is important for two main reasons. Three. One, it's a matter of time, right? It's a matter of time before the immune system destroys the thyroid to such a degree that we start getting skewed lab values and skewed hormone levels. Two, that indicates active inflammation if we have an active autoimmune response. And three, it will create, even in the early stages, it can create varying amounts of thyroid hormone to be released into the blood at any given time. So you can imagine if the immune system is attacking the thyroid, sometimes there might be more thyroid hormone produced, and then there might be less thyroid hormone produced. Whereas normally those fluctuations are going to be in response to our normal environment, our stress, if we've eaten, if we're fasted, or, et cetera. So that is also very important because some of the earlier symptoms of Hashimoto's is people will almost fluctuate between hypo and hyper symptoms. They may feel anxious, then depressed. They might have constipation, then diarrhea. They may be so tired, but they can't sleep, right? So that's important to know, and especially if you're running labs to be able to look for that. But it's also going to highlight why I include the antibodies as just a routine panel. We just run antibodies on everyone because I can't count the number of times, and this is anecdotal in my tiny little practice. I can't count the number of times antibodies have come back positive. The person didn't know they had Hashimoto's, and legally I can't diagnose. So I refer to a doctor, say, go talk to them. But hey, that's what these antibodies can be consistent with. And they have the symptoms, but their thyroid lab values are normal. This person would have completely fallen through the cracks and never known that they had an autoimmune response until, like I said, maybe a decade later, when really their symptoms fit it. They're starting to experience the symptoms of Hashimoto's, and kind of the downfall, the fallout that can follow that. So, okay, going back to, let's talk about, now that we kind of grossly understand thyroid physiology, last thing I'll say with that, because I'm going to kind of get into this a little bit, is this can happen with any hormone, is it matters not only how the gland is producing it, but how the body is responding to it. So take insulin resistance. That's the easiest one to see. We can see this with cortisol resistance too. Resistance being the key word here, right? So if the gland may be producing the hormone just fine, but the body is not responding to it. There are a number of reasons. When it comes to the thyroid, the bigger ones are nutrient deficiencies, inflammation, and stress, like emotional stress, oxidative stress, cellular stress. That has, it can be toxin exposure, et cetera. But those are some of the bigger reasons why, especially inflammation, why someone's thyroid may be producing T4 and T3 just fine, but the body, the cells of the rest of the body are saying, like, we can't handle it. And they're resistant to thyroid hormone. And so we can see those patterns as well. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit more about thyroid physiology, let's talk about the three different patterns of hypothyroidism. We'll start with the obvious, right? We'll start with the primary hypothyroidism. That's the textbook. That's the textbook example, right? So what happens in primary hypothyroidism is the thyroid is not adequately producing enough T4 or T3, especially T4, because again, 93% of what the thyroid produces is T4. So is not producing enough T4, T3. The brain is screaming at the thyroid. So TSH is high and T4 and or T3 are low on blood work. Now, low T3, if you hear me kind of hesitating on that one. Low T3 can also be a conversion problem, meaning the thyroid is producing T4 just fine, but because T4 has to be converted into T3, that conversion may be hindered. And there's a number of reasons for that. I'm not going to get like too techie into the why behind all of this. I really just want to arm you with an understanding of some of these patterns and that it's not just primary hypothyroidism. So that's why I'm saying like low T4, definitely low, or even in some cases, low normal T4. Low T3, maybe it may not necessarily be a thyroid problem per se. Could be, especially if T4 is also low. So, anyways, TSH will be high because the brain is screaming at the thyroid, like, hey, we're low on thyroid hormone. You got to ramp up production, start producing this more. And those T4 and T3 will be low. So, that's primary hypothyroidism. It's a problem with the thyroid, right? Period. End of story. Number 2 is euthyroid. So, euthyroid, it gets a little murky. So, in euthyroid, it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem with the thyroid. More often, it's not. More often, it's a problem with either the brain communicating with the thyroid may be producing its hormones just fine, but again, that T4 to T3 conversion isn't happening right, leading to low active T3 hormone. It could also be the T4 is being converted into what's called reverse T3. So, this is what I was talking about with the body's resistance. We can see that through running the marker reverse T3. And if reverse T3 is high, then that would indicate, a pattern that we may see is brain's communicating just fine with the thyroid. The thyroid's producing its hormone just fine, but the body is saying, no, we can't handle it. And so TSH will be normal, sometimes high, sometimes low, but often normal. T4 will be normal, sometimes even on the higher end of normal, but reverse T3 will be high. And T3 will be either low or low normal. So that's how we know this person may have hypothyroid symptoms. Absolutely. But it's not a problem with their thyroid. And giving them thyroid hormone medication is right. That's not going to fix the problem. The problem isn't not having enough thyroid hormone, it's that the body's resistant to it. So, more is just like throwing gas on the fire. We have to address the underlying inflammation and dysfunction that is causing that to happen. And then the third pattern is Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's thyroiditis, like I was talking about before. So Hashimoto's is kind of its own category. It is not a problem with the thyroid. The thyroid is an innocent bystander. It's a problem with the immune system that has become imbalanced and is attacking self-healthy tissue that will lead to thyroid degradation and eventually hypothyroidism. But as I was saying before, that can take a decade for the thyroid labs to respond, to change, and the person may have hypothyroid symptoms because of the fluctuating hormone levels and the underlying inflammation that it causes. High levels of inflammation mimics hypothyroidism too, right? Fatigue, insomnia, difficulty losing weight, anxiety, depression, like a lot of those things are going to go along with that, even if the thyroid hasn't been affected in that sense yet. So you can see now, I listed off reverse T3, 2 antibodies, free T3. There's 4 markers that we need. Like running TSH and free T4 just looks for primary hypothyroidism. If those are normal, we're completely ignoring these other 2 patterns of hypothyroidism that may be affecting the person, and they fall, like I said, they fall beneath the cracks. And it also means that giving someone thyroid hormone is great if primary hypothyroidism is the problem. And even then, ideally, it's a temporary fix, right? While we are figuring out the underlying causes as to why their thyroid's not functioning well. Again, is it stress? Is it nutrient deficiencies? Is it heavy metal exposure? Like what's causing that? Is it more advanced Hashimoto's? What's causing that? So rather, in euthyroid or in Hashimoto's, it's not going to fix the problem. And in some cases, it's not even really an appropriate solution if the body's resistant to thyroid hormone anyways. You just got to clean up the environment. So that's where oftentimes in those cases we look at nutrient status, like iron is so important, vitamin D, iodine, selenium, zinc, like all these nutrients are so important for thyroid production and function. So we look at nutrient status, gut health, emotional stress, um, toxin exposure. There's many other environmental things that come into play in that case. Most of the time when I see that, I don't do a whole lot with the thyroid directly. The thyroid is the canary in the coal mine. We got to clean up the environment and the thyroid will clean up itself, basically. Sometimes we'll do some tweaks, use some iodine, some targeted mineral therapy, adaptogens for stress, breath work, things like that. Castor oil over the thyroid, like we'll do some targeted work, but oftentimes it's not. It's about cleaning up the environment and the thyroid will respond on its own. So I hope, again, the biggest takeaways from this are how important it is to run a proper blood panel. So TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, thyroglobulin, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, how important that is. And then if your TSH and your T4 are normal, and this isn't even getting into how skewed conventional lab ranges are. So we really want to look at TSH between call it 1 and 2.5, I would say. And free T4 between 1 and 1.5 is where I like to see it. And free T3 between 3 and 4. And reverse T3 less than 18. If those are the numbers you want to look at. So if you're outside of those ranges, that might give you a clue that something really might be going on with your thyroid or with your health that is worth looking at. And is thyroid hormone, medication, would it be helpful or kind of redundant? So I hope that helps. If this resonates with you, please drop a comment below. You can go to my website, progressivehealthandwellness.com, all spelled out. Happy to hold a free 15-minute discovery call, talk more about the symptoms that you're having and what you're looking for. And if it feels like a good fit, then we'll talk about how to get started. And if not, that's okay too. But I think it's really important that you at least have the knowledge of that there may be more out there than what was done, and you may be able to find better answers. All right. Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.